The County Conversation podcast is sponsored by Daffabet, the world's leading online betting site. To find out more, visit daffabet.com. Hello and welcome to the County Conversation, the show where we take the three most interesting stories from the last week of county cricket and give you the inside track to them here. I'm Cameron Punsonby.
I am Nick Friend.
And our three topics this week. Surrey, they win the very first Women's Vitality Blast. Rehan Ahmed, English spinners, we're back. Until we're not. Just before we hit record on this, Liam Dawson's been dropped and England aren't playing a spinner. But it's fine because Hartley skipping ahead. Rehan Ahmed, Tom Hartley, all the boys are back in business. And you know what's also back in business? It's the Metro Bank, baby. We are back for some Metro Bank Men's One Day Cup action. But we are going to start with Women's Blast Finals weekend. And Nick, well, it was Surrey's to lose and Surrey won.
They did not lose, indeed. Yes. What would you like me to add? They were...
How was the day? How did it all go down?
I was there. It was... how was the day? It was an interesting day. It was obviously Surrey were only in the final, but it was a record crowd for a domestic women's T20 game, which I think sort of excludes 100 crowds, isn't it? But it was 5,670 odd, I think.
Yeah.
Which, all things considered, and when I say all things considered, I mean considering Charlotte Edwards Cup final crowds, for example, but also considering the clash with the Lionesses. And
I don't think the clash with the Lionesses would impact it that much. I think
I don't know, but it wasn't as beautiful a day as we've had at times this summer. It was still nice and dry. I'm trying to think of other things that sort of came into it. I suppose the other thing is that it was the first time for doing this, and I think you're always wary when you turn up at a big stadium for women's domestic cricket, particularly, but also women's international stuff in the past. That an empty oval looks worse, feels worse than an empty Chelmsford, let's say.
Yeah.
But no, it never felt empty. I'd say I thought the atmosphere was pretty strong throughout. I thought it came alive more so as the day wore on. Surrey were in the final, and I suppose it was the final, so there's a bit more on it. The days moved on a bit. That's the off the field side of it. I thought on the field it wasn't as we expected. Actually, was it? I mean, we said last week that the dream final, the anticipated final, was Surrey v the Blaze,
yeah.
the two. I think you can safely say the two best teams, and I think Birmingham Bears would agree that they were very much underdogs going in. They were kind of surprised, I think, that they reached the final themselves. But it was.
Why don't we analyse some of the storylines out of it as opposed to the matches that happened? It was T20 cricket. Surrey, the kind of strongest team on paper, strongest team across the group stage, won. So in that respect, you can say are kind of deserved winners. I thought Izzy Wong, who had a spectacular day, especially in the semi-final, made an interesting point afterwards where she was saying that she basically felt like it was what's the word? Corrupted's too strong a word. It tainted or impacts the day where you're expecting basically one team to play two matches and the other team only plays one. And that's different to the men's finals day where both finalists will have earlier played a semi-final.
Yeah.
Izzy Wong's basically going like, we're kind of shattered and kind of having to get ourselves going again to play this match against Surrey, and that feels a bit of a discrepancy. We're not able to put on the best show we possibly can. And her solution to that was the idea that they make two finals days and the men and women share the stage. So you have a men's semi-finals and a women's semis-finals finals day, and then that throws forward to a week or two down the line where the women's final precedes the men's final, as it does in the 100. I thought it was interesting. I'm not sure of my complete emotions on it at the moment.
I don't like it. I think the 100 exists. The 100's done that bit, and I kind of think that the more a lot of what we're going to see in the next couple of years going forward is how we can stand the Blast on its own as a product, given the 100 and how the Blast can continue to exist and thrive. And I think firstly, turning something that works very well, which is Blast Finals Day, despite its various imperfections, from a as I say, like an elite sport perspective, perhaps that works well, and I don't think we should be changing that. I I would also say that this is not new. It was the same in the Charlotte. Charlotte Edwards final. Charlotte Edwards finals day was the same, eliminator followed by final. I'm not sure it has to be. I'm not sure why. I know there are 8 teams. I know it would mean half the teams getting through. Um,
Is this not a problem just for this year, basically? Next year, there's going to be 9 teams in Tier 1. Following year, there's going to be 10. So if you're going to go,
I think I certainly think the first part of his point is very fair um, that Birmingham felt somewhat shattered. There are some really granular bits to this. This is not Surrey's doing, but I did some digging into this afterwards. A couple of the players spoke to me about it. And, ECB provisions for the day was that the losing team in the semi final, in the eliminator rather, got a hot buffet, and the winning team in the eliminator got a cold buffet, and we're back on the field 45 minutes later. And Izzy Wong said, I thought tongue in cheek, but it turns out not, in the press conference after the final, that she'd not had a hot meal since the previous day. And that speaks to the wider challenge of playing those 2 games on the day, and it is for a lot of those players quite new. Not in the way that the men's finals day has always worked. And yeah, there's certainly something in. To be honest, I've not really thought about it in the way that Surrey turn up, play 1 game, a fresh to daisy, ready to go, with the added advantage of playing in their home ground and
yeah,
surroundings very comfortable with. But look, that was their reward for winning the group, knowing that finals day
sure.
was going to be at their ground. It's no different really to Northants turning up at Wantage Road for Tier 2 finals day, which obviously they didn't make it, but knowing their own surroundings. So I don't buy that bit quite so much, but there's certainly I get it, but I would be very reticent to move something that works very well, which is the unique, like the completely unique setup that is men's T20 Blast Finals Day,
Yeah,
because that is a day that works so well for the domestic game. That said, Izzy's not the first person I've heard mention that. I was speaking to a county director of cricket last week who said the same thing. Who wondered whether it was time now. Who wondered whether, and this is an interesting sort of pinch point for the game, I think. Um, he said he wondered whether it was still appropriate for the game to be marketing this big day. It's essentially this big sort of piss up and 12-hour bar day, essentially,
yeah.
for a bunch of fans at Edgbaston to go and watch 2 semis, then a final, while we're also talking about player welfare and playing 2 games a day and all that kind of stuff. Like, I do think that for all the talk about that, as I said before, like the big thing that the county game needs now, particularly as the 100 grows and we go towards this sort of like slightly reduced blast schedule, is we can't start stripping away the bits of the blast that really do work.
Yeah.
And the fact is, finals day sells out the previous November, and I wouldn't be in a rush to change that.
Yeah, I think I agree. I wouldn't be in a rush to change men's final day.
So just one point as well. On just touching on something that Beth Barrett Wild said to us last week on this podcast about so there'll be fewer double headers, men's and women's double headers next year, and a big part of the reason for that is because Beth and the English game more widely wants to see what the women's game looks like as a standalone product, and getting five and a bit thousand, nearly 6,000 in for the first Women's Blast Finals Day standalone, to me is a pretty good number to build on. At the Ovals. You do it at the same venue next year. You've got that captive audience. You try and grow it to people who didn't come. That's what I'd be doing rather than trying to go back in with this idea of dependency on on the men's audience, because I don't think it needs that.
I think my kind of inference from Izzy Wong's comments wasn't necessarily of like let's tie it up with the men's to kind of piggyback on that. It was more from a kind of sporting.
Yeah, no, I just think the 100's done that one, and I think
Yeah,
the blast just
that's
succeed
fine.
needs its own thing.
But I think I agree with you. I also think I don't mind if the team that wins the group stage has that advantage of being fresher. I think one of my, maybe this is my kind of old fashionedness where I still kind of rile a little bit at the team that just doesn't win the league, not being rewarded with winning it, or they don't get enough of an advantage when it comes to a finals day, and to have that kind of distinct uh, level up from the opponents. I think I like that a little bit. And also, I can imagine a world where this is going to change anyway in the next year or two. If in 2 years' time there's 10 teams in Tier 1, which there will be, there's a very real world where they replicate the men's blast, and women's finals, there will be 2 semis into the final. So I think it was a fair comment raised by Izzy Wong, but I think on the whole, we are unfortunately going to disagree with her on this occasion and expect, rather than the men's and women's finals days to merge, the women's finals day to potentially replicate the men's? I don't know. Anyway, next topic. With Sunday, where were some of the England players? So Nat Sciver-Brunt and Amy Jones were absent for the Blaze. I think we're in alignment here, Nick, where Nat Sciver-Brunt hadn't played a game for the Blaze all year. Fine. England captain, wrap her up in cotton wool. No, getting parachuted in for finals day feels a little bit icky. But Amy Jones, given the edict of kind of how important domestic cricket was and is for now international selection, where Charlotte Edwards had been, and the importance Charlotte Edwards has put on the domestic game, to not see her was strange and I thought a shame.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't think Nat Sciver-Brunt should necessarily play another game of cricket before the World Cup. To be honest,
Yeah,
like she's that important to England, and we've seen through the summer she's not yet fully fit. She'll be managing her bowling. By not bowling, England need Nat Sciver-Brunt as fit as she possibly can be. Fact, leave it at that. She played one last game, so did Amy Jones, but Amy Jones also played all of that April May sort of tranche of 50 over stuff,
yeah,
which, opening the batting probably actually got her that gig at the top of the order in the ODI side with Tammy Beaumont. So Amy Jones really benefited from the 50 over stuff. Is very much part of the Blaze, and in both of our opinions, should have been there on Sunday. I mean, the Blaze would certainly have liked both of them there. There was an interesting disagreement, let's call it, afterwards, or a contradiction, where Kirsty Gordon in her post-match press conference was very clear, very, very clear, one word clear, that this was the players. That was her one-word answer when asked if it was the players or the ECB who had prevented Jones and Sciver-Brunt from playing for the Blaze on Sunday. And 10 minutes later, the ECB were very clear that the ECB had rested Jones and Sciver-Brunt. It's not great. It's not great to have that mixed messaging. It was a 20 over game. I do struggle with the idea of resting players for finals day. We've had this in the men's blast for years with finals day, albeit often increasingly so, sort of overlapping that weekend with these national games. But then we've seen this week as well the 50 over games that are ongoing as we record on Wednesday afternoon in the One Day Cup. Hardly anything when players are available. And yeah, to your point before about Charlotte Edwards' importance that she's placed on this, I think it makes a bit of a mockery of that.
yeah,
What are they resting for? This is, they're out of ODIs now. There are no more ODIs before the World Cup, and England go into that World Cup on the back of a pretty mediocre series defeat by India. They
yeah.
won 1 out of 3 games, effectively a game that they won on the toss with a rain-affected game at Lords. Pretty well beaten the other 2 games at the Utilities Bowl in Durham. I'd be getting Tammy Beaumont, who scored 47 runs in the series, straight back out there. It seems odd to me that Emma Lamb is not being rested, despite scoring 100 more runs than one of the openers. And the opener, who wasn't rested for finals day 4 days ago, is now taking a break for 50
Is it
over
just a
game.
case of because that there's these handful of Metro Bank games, 50 over games for the women, and then we go into the 100, and then the competition resumes in full in September? Is it not? Are they just saying to Tammy, "You've played a lot of cricket, have 4 days off, then go into the 100"?
Maybe, but it's we're not talking of Kookaburra Championship game here. We're talking about 50 over game for a batter, slightly shorter runs, in a year where the whole narrative has been, right, come on everyone, line up.
Yeah,
Who wants a spot? And so what happens today if, as I said, I don't know what's going to happen as the games that are going on my record, but let's say Maya Boucher gets 130. If
yeah.
Boucher gets 130 and the England openers aren't Jones and Beaumont aren't playing, then where do we stand with all this messaging around
Yeah,
the competition? Because it's not exactly like the England players have used these ODIs against India to cement places. If anything, we kind of finished with fewer answers and more questions. So
because weirdly, if you're Boucher and you score runs, which she's actually got out, but if your runs kind of like count for less if your competitors aren't playing, which is unfair, but that is kind of true. Anyway,
but if I tell you something, like if I tell you that Sarah Glenn, for example, has been rested from these games,
yeah,
Sarah Glenn's not played any cricket. Like, she's not. Emma Arlett isn't centrally contracted. She's being rested for these games. Charlie Dean bowls off spin. She's been rested for like. I'm not. I don't. I just don't buy it. Like, I get Lauren Bell,
Yeah.
workload management seamers. Same with Lauren Filer, Danny Gibson, who's been nursing several injuries for a while, and England would love to have her available for World Cup. I get those ones, but your batters in particular, like they in this summer where so many runs have been scored, as you say, it feels unfair that there are batters who could smash the door down today and go, well, it doesn't really count, does it? Because we don't know how Tammy got on, how we would have got on. Like that to me doesn't work.
Right. So it wasn't just the one finals day that took place over the weekend. There was also the Tier 2 finals day, which took place on Saturday. And unfortunately, where Tier 1's finals day was kind of all in all considered a glowing success, I think that's a fair assessment. Tier 2 less so. And our digital editor, Nick Howson, was there on the ground and has some information for us.
So this was ostensibly the showcase day in the Tier 2 calendar. Yes, we have a one-day cup final coming up in September, but Blast finals days have tended to be, the big day on the domestic circuit for the men, and there's no reason why that can't be the same for the women. But if this is a reflection of how this level is going to be treated in years to come, I'd be pretty fearful. Granted, it was staged on the same weekend as a men's test, and it was the same. It was the day before the Tier 1 final, and it wasn't laden with lots of England or international names that perhaps could be sold against. But I think we can probably do better than this. It was blurred in the calendar, but it shouldn't have been treated like it was invisible, like it was some kind of estranged sibling. It had the sort of the atmosphere really was sort of school sports day. Some of the better supported teams in the country, the likes of Yorkshire and Middlesex, were represented, but the attendance was mildly pathetic, really. Tickets, were reasonably priced. They were £10 for adults and £5 for children. But you can't expect people to come to an event, regardless of how you price it and regardless of when you stage it, if they're unaware of it. And questions need to be asked about whether every effort was done to promote this event to its fullest extent, and what kind of marketing levers, and by that I mean, spend basically, were pulled to draw people in. These kind of days should be the breeding ground for England cricketers of the future, and surely they deserved better than this. There's some really simple things that were wrong. Concessions not being open for very long. There was only really one van selling anything to the general public. If they wanted to buy really any food to sustain themselves for what was essentially sort of 10, 12 hours of cricket, they had to leave the ground. So they were incentivising people to actually leave the cricket behind and go find some sustenance from somewhere. It meant that by the end of the final, the only people that really remained were a small mattering of friends and family of the winning team, which certainly can't be right.
Nick Friend, that was Nick Howson. It didn't sound great.
Did you say how's Nick Howson?
No, I said Nick Friend. That was Nick Howson.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes, it was. He didn't love the day, but he was. He's fine.
He's fine. Yeah. Nick
that was him.
Right.
And Kirsty Gordon actually spoke about it on Sunday as well. She'd obviously heard about it, and I think she spoke about it because I think she felt like she saw similarities in what she heard about and what she played in the previous year at the final Charlotte Edwards Cup finals day, which was broadly sort of like similarly like non-event, if that can be an adjective. That is, and she. If you think back to those finals days, and the reason I touched on it earlier about in terms of attendance improvement, that it really was non-event. I remember being at the first one at what was then the Aegeus Bowl, and then I remember being at Worcester and Derby as well. And for different reasons they didn't work. Worcester, there was a problem with lack of floodlights and the rain and the light, and even at the end of even at last year's Hay Flint final, the rain meant that the ceremony was conducted in this bizarre sort of like in the rain in front of essentially just like where there was a little bit of cover. It was basically like in front of a brick wall. And Nick says there Wantage Road wasn't fit for purpose for a day like this. I think he's probably right in that it's not so much about, and that's not to disparage Northamptonshire, but if you can't present something as a major match day, and then
Not be able to host
and
it.
then someone who was there described it to me as much more like a venue hire than a major match day, almost like ECB had said, "Can we use your ground for the day?" And Northampton's gone, "There's the ground, here are the keys," but there'd been very little collaboration beyond that, and but on the field, a really interesting day because, like, without being churlish, like Yorkshire are meant to win.
Yeah.
Like, whether Lauren Winfield Hill and Stair Calais should have been playing, I dare say there's a loophole that we might not see open again. Stair Calais played 24 hours later. She played, we're talking about playing 2 games a day. This has never happened before. Stair Calais played 20 games across 2 finals day in 24 hours, which is remarkable. She got an Uber down from Northampton to South London on Saturday night.
Yeah.
She had to jump into the Middlesex changing room after losing the final to get their food because theirs arrived before Yorkshire's did. She then made a match-winning 45 alongside Izzy Wong in the eliminator for Bears, and then turned out in the final and was run out. That strikes me as wild, and also disappointingly as well strikes me as one of the things that the ECB said that they were going to be much tighter on this year, which was the kind of like freewheeling loan system that had taken over the last couple of years of the women's regional setup, where there were very few regs and there were players playing twice against the same team in the same round for different teams. Remember Eve Jones did that. There's another example. I can't remember who else. That strikes me as the kind of thing that shouldn't be happening. But look, for Middlesex to win that day rather, by 10 wickets in both games, they were 230 without loss across the day, is about as we talked at the end of last year about Gloucestershire winning the men's blast, and not the most clinical way you can do it. I don't think you can be any more clinical than only your openers batting over the course of a finals day.
So to sum up, on Saturday, Middlesex won the Tier 2 Vitality Blast Finals Day, and it was Yorkshire and Glamorgan in one of the semi-finals, which are the 2 teams that are going into Tier 1 over the next 2 years. And so Middlesex is a good. It does feel like, whether politely or otherwise, it was a good opportunity for Middlesex and the other Tier 2 teams who might have felt begrudged. I don't know if that's the right word. And not being given the Tier 1 to kind of stick 2 fingers up. I didn't mean to actually show it on the screen there. Stick 2 fingers up and say, yeah, we're all right here, actually. There we go. If you saw it and you're offended, I'm really sorry. We're going to carry on. Right. We're going to be right back after this break.
The Cricketers' award-winning team brings our subscribers news, features and insight on county and international cricket every single day. You can try us now by signing up for £1. Yes, you heard that correctly. Just £1 at thecricketer.com/digital.
Nick, English spinners. Or what? You know what? I'm going to rephrase that, because there's always been this mystery to Rehan Ahmed that actually he's a batter.
English batters who bowl.
He's a batter who bowls, and he got picked as this exciting leggy, but they were waiting. And he was literally a child. He was 18 when he played for England. He played like 3 first-class games for Leicestershire. He got picked for his leggies, but they were like, watch this lad turn into a batter. And that year has come. It might have felt like it's taken a while, but that's just because it's been 3 years. But then you forget how young he was to begin with, and now he has scored his 5th county championship century of the season. He's been opening. He's been at 3. No one in the country has scored as many county championship tons as him. It's been a revelation and a bit of a tangent, because I just want to do some more Rehan Ahmed kind of eulogies for a little bit. There's a very real world where why are you smiling at me?
Eulogy feels like a funny word.
Yeah, I was like, that's what people say when it's a funeral, isn't it? Well, it's fine. Where England have the brothers of England's test team, Ahmed, Roo. That feels like a real world approaching us very soon.
It's really cool. He's having a really cool season, partly because he scored 500s and he's still like 25th in the run scorers, because he's literally like, I think he's got 500s and 150 now. So if he can get past, generally when he gets past like 10, he goes on and does something wild. He's just a really fun cricketer, isn't he? I think he's quite hard to sort of like quantify or analyze, because he bats in a manner, and I mean this really respectfully. When you watch his highlights, he looks profoundly unserious, if you know
But
what I
I think
mean.
in a wonderful way.
No, 100%, like 100%. But which is why I'm saying, like, I think it's kind of hard to quantify, because I think you watch for the first 100, let's say, and you go, well, this kid's obviously got a lot of talent, but that's not going to work every week.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, like if you like you jump onto Twitter and whenever Ahmed scored runs, the first clip is always like both feet off the floor, cutting the bowler back over his head,
Yeah.
and you're like, what am I seeing? But you do it over and over and over again, and yeah, he's not the first player I've heard this with. Sam Curran is
Yeah.
is I think more gradually getting to that place, isn't he? Where he's the batter who bowls, and it's not unique, but I suppose what is different with him is that the whole package is so fun. He bowls leggies and he bowls this big googly, and England used him as that nighthawk once upon a time, just to try and belt it at 3. And look, he's had a really interesting season at Leicestershire, because actually he's not bowled very much. He's bowled before this week, or sorry, last week rather, when he bowled 60 overs in the match and took 30 in the match against Derbyshire. He had bowled I think he'd bowled double figure overs in an innings once, and that was in the first Cooper round against Glamorgan. He bowled 12 overs, to 2 for 40. He bowled 20 odd overs, 25 overs for England Lions against India A in the second innings of one of those games. But the rest of the season, if I just list you off what he's done,
Yeah.
bowled 7 overs in the first game of the season, bowled 16 overs in the second game of the season, 8 overs in each innings. Third game of the season, he bowled 9 overs in the first innings, didn't bowl in the second innings. Fourth game of the season, he bowled 4 overs in the match against Gloucestershire. Fifth game of the season, he didn't bowl. They beat Northants, Leicestershire by 130 runs, didn't bowl at all. In the sixth game against Middlesex, bowled 9.2 overs in the game, came on to bowl the tail both times. A week later against Lancashire, he bowled 5.5 overs in the match.
Yeah.
So he's been used really.
I've got a way of saying that a bit shorter, if you want. He bowled as many overs against Derbyshire as he had in the entirety of the rest of the season. He doubled his tally. He bowled 60 in the season to that point, and then he bowled 60 in the one match against Derbyshire.
And yet, what he's managed to do at the same time is he's taken 20 odd wickets at 15 apiece.
Yeah.
So we're looking at him. He's having one of those seasons where if he was Liam Dawson, everyone would be saying, why is this guy not playing for England? And if he was Darren Stevens, he'd be saying, this guy's the best all rounder in the game.
I don't think you would. Can't pick him. I don't think you would, because until last week it wasn't a thing.
No, I'm not saying he should have been, but like purely on a numerical basis, like that is the level of season we're talking about. Like, like he's got 500s and he's taking loads of wickets without going for any runs. I think he's just really interesting.
So I disagree with that, in that Rehan Ahmed's season wasn't a thing until last week. He's taken 20 wickets this year. He hasn't bowled, as to your point. He's doubled the amount of overs he's bowled in the season in that one match. And so you couldn't comment on his bowling because he hadn't done it. And before a week ago, he scored 3 centuries, which was an achievement and suggested at his progression as a batter. But now, a week later, he's scored 5, which is genuinely noteworthy. I think it's to your point about him being fun and now proving the consistency along with the eccentricity. There's a pair of boundaries he scored against. It was either George Garrett or Wes Agar in this innings, where in consecutive deliveries he plays 2 cover drives that go for 4. But the first one, he plays it with his back foot in the back leg in the air, and the second one, it's like proper, like textbook forward, full face, and you're like, this guy's wicked. And there was an interesting point raised on the Telegraph cricket podcast, where basically the hypothetical was put forward of where would we be if Rehan had been the one had been the spinner rather than Bashir, where he was backed. And I don't think it's possible. I don't actually think that would have benefited Rehan Ahmed, because I think what we're seeing now is he needed the opportunity to bat, and that's where his kind of most potential for growth existed. Whereas if he played for England, he would have carried on being at 8 and he would have been like the wild card pick with the ball. Whereas he's now, the kids who they're really talented at 16, 17, and so they bat 8 in the ones and don't bowl.
Yeah.
And so
And then they
actually,
stopped playing cricket when they're 19.
when they eventually drop down to the twos, they've never learned how to win a game or bat
Yeah.
or actually play. And I think Rehan Ahmed is now learning how to play. I think let's move on. Let's talk about the other spinners because this was meant to set us up for a wider conversation. Because Rehan Ahmed wasn't the only English spinner to do very
To take
well.
2 fivers and score 100 in the same game.
So both Rehan Ahmed and Tom Hartley took twin fifers and scored a century in the lot since 1987 when Richard Hadley did it. Only Liam Dawson has achieved that feat in the last 38 years, and he did it once in 2023, once in 2024, and then Hartley and Ahmed did it on the same day. Hartley's kind of the forgotten man. Like when Bashir broke his finger, Dawson, yep, here we go, plug and play. Let's see what's the go of this lad. Tom Hartley was out in India, took a six on Test debut, and he didn't get a sniff.
No, completely, and it's not just he didn't get a sniff. It's like when Dawson was, when it became clear that Bashir was injured and Dawson was the likely man to come in, people still referenced Rehan. They still said, they could go to Rehan Ahmed, but he's not bowled very much this season. And that is true. Going into July 22nd, which is a week ago, Dawson had picked by then, he had, his wickets for the season were Bashir, Ben Sanderson, Zafar Goa, Navi Sharma, Dane Patterson, Tom Bailey, Hanson Phillip, and then 3 guys in the India A game, but at the end of May. So he'd not done much bowling, Rehan, as we discussed already. But he was still mentioned as this is why he won't play. There was never any this is why Tom Hartley won't play. Because the answer is kind of he's kind of just got off the radar completely in the last 18 months. And, how much that is down to him, I'm honestly not sure. I think the worst thing that happened to Tom Hartley in a way, and everyone will talk about, the development you get from playing with Nathan Lyon and all that. That deal didn't work. They wanted Nathan Lyon for the whole summer. He ended up there for 7 games up till the end of July. They had to get those games in. Sometimes came at Hartley's expense. They tried to pick him together, but given the choice of picking one of those 2 to bowl at one end, you're only ever going to pick Nathan Lyon to bowl that end. Hartley was away with the Lions this winter, came back at the start of the season with a broken hand. He was also, I think I'm right in saying, part of the England T20 World Cup squad last year. And then he was also part of so he has been around. He was part of the England white ball squad this summer against West Indies as well. So it's not they've forgotten who he is, but certainly from a red ball perspective, it feels like he's gone so far away, isn't it? It's probably as far away as we thought Dawson was.
I sometimes fear for those people the most, actually. The people who are in squads for a long time and then don't play. This is all kind of hypothetical, but there's a reason they don't play. And there's a reason why, after being looked at and seen and trained with people who pick the teams, if they drop out and they don't get a go, that's often can be quite a difficult position to come back from, because it's not like you're an unknown character. They might have just made the call that they've seen you and they think thanks, but no thanks.
But I think what's so interesting with Hartley is that he did really well. Like he did as well as Tom Hartley could possibly have been expected to do in India, and did as well, if not better, in that series than Bashir. They obviously decided there and then that Bashir was the one who had more potential going for him, even though you always feel like England are crying out for someone for a left arm spinner, someone to spin the ball away from the right hand. So I was at Cheltenham actually when he took the 6 for before the 5 for after the 100, so the middle bit of his game, the game of his life, and it was just really nice to see him do well. To be honest, it was day 3 of a Kookaburra game. It was still a long way away from the expectation that there would be a result. Gloucestershire backed themselves into trouble by not making the follow on, and then it broke up and spun a bit more on the final day. But it was a very good important 6 for, and it came on the back of 100. That, well, yeah. So it was, this isn't some Tom Hartley for England thing. This is very much just it was just nice to see him do well, and it's also worth remembering how far left field his original pick was. That was. So those Cheltenham 5s were the 2nd and 3rd championship 5s of his career. The stat is that he's only got 5s something like Hyderabad, Billericay for Lancashire twos, Cheltenham, one against Surrey, and then a load in like different bits of Liverpool, Ormskirk, like he's Colwyn Bay's taken his fight, like that's his list of five. He's done very little. Done very little to get in that squad, but then did an awful lot. It felt like to stay in that squad, and somehow, that's all we heard, kind of.
Well, both him and Rehan Ahmed were kind of the rare Kookaburra beneficiaries of this season, kind of proving and reminding everyone of their worth, basically. But speaking of Kookaburras,
I touched one.
You felt one.
I seen a Kookaburra.
I have an issue to raise before we get into it, and I want to come at you with some aggression. Actually, not too much aggression.
Was it my photos?
It wasn't your photos, so I'm very aware that you are analysing and reacting to an 80-over-old ball. As a club cricketer, I'm not sure you've ever actually seen an 80-over-old ball, because the oldest they'll get will be 50. So I was
do you not play in the
interested.
old days of taking the old ball?
Oh, gee,
The best
yeah.
cricket.
Sorry,
The best
you've got a laser memory of how bad. No one kept those balls for 30 overs anyway. And also, I was just intrigued as to whether you held it and you thought, yes, this is just a very old cricket ball, or it was more extreme than that.
Okay, no, fair question. And I did think about this at the time. So you're not throwing
Not
throwing bars my way. The best way I can describe it is if I was given that to bowl within a net, on a Tuesday evening at training, I would throw it away and find another one. It was It was.
Have you still got it?
No, they didn't let me keep it. They let me. I went to. I was there, and I just think you write so much about these days. These four. I think you write so when you're at a 4-dayer of a Kookaburra, you write the same piece 3 days in a row, right?
Yeah.
Then you hope there's a result on the final day, and I was just honestly, I was just quite bored, and I went over to Fletch, the head of comms at Middlesex, and said, "Could you ask the match referee if there's anything wrong with me having the ball afterwards?" Because I've written so much about the Kookaburra, it'd be quite interesting to actually know what this is about, and with whether people taking this out of proportion, and whether everyone needs to get over themselves a bit and whatever. And so I just was given the ball. Tom Helm bowled it off the field, like, get out of my sight. Literally bowled it off the Merchant Taylor's ground, and it was brought to me a few minutes later. And honestly, the seam is squashed into the ball to the point that I couldn't quite get the photo I wanted, but if you looked at it as on the perimeter, there is no outline at all. There's no bit above the ball. It's I literally pushed into one side of it, and it doesn't. It's not quite an orange.
Yeah.
But you can feel yourself making an indentation into the ball, and that, given what cricket balls are made of, that shouldn't be happening. And you can understand why. And the bit that I found most boring, let's say, of these Kookaburra rounds is that you do get to a point after about 45, 50 overs where it almost feels like both teams shake hands and go, right, for the next 30 overs, we're going to race through them and try and get rid of this one and get a new ball out so we can start the game again. And because of that, because the ball is so soft, you are going to score at twos because it's too soft for you to hit off the square. So you end up with this, Zafar Goa was injured as well for Middlesex. So I was at this game and I was watching, I think something like 15 to the 25 overs before the 80th over were bowled by Lewis Deploy, Sam Robson, and Ben Geddes. And I'm going to use the word, I'm going to call it exploratory. There was a lot of optimistic spin bowling, and yes, some people go, well, this is why we got the Kookaburra, to get guys bowling, to sort the wheat from the chaff. It's but I'm telling you, unless you are Mitchell Starc and you've got the actual airspeed to hit someone on the toe with a ball, no matter how old it is, you are just not going to make anything happen with a ball like that. And they took a couple of wickets because they were playing on a school ground. And Merchant Taylor's is not known for being the flattest deck in the world. But
the question I want to ask here, they use these balls in other parts of the world. So why here? Why is it?
Do they though? Is the question I'd ask. While at Cheltenham on whatever day it was, day 3 of that game, I was sat in the media balcony is an outground, basically shared by everyone. And everyone in this case included the match referee, who, much to my surprise, is Steve Davis, the former Australian Test umpire.
Okay.
And
I'd have
I
to
wasn't
pretend to
aware
know
that
who that is.
you'd recognise him. He umpired a lot of Test matches in the sort of mid-late
Oh
noughties,
yeah, I do recognise him.
early 2010s. I didn't know he was over here. I didn't know he was a match referee. And I didn't have this conversation with him, but I was told secondhand by someone who did that someone made a comment to him and said, half joke, or obviously entirely joking, said, should we just like sub in the Dukes now and see what happens? And Davis apparently jumped back and said, well, if we were using the proper Kookaburra, maybe we'd be getting something out of this. And I've heard this from a couple of people, a couple of Australians now, who said that whatever ball we're using does not feel like the Kookaburra they use back home in Australia. And I've not done enough digging yet into this, but there's certainly it's also all we hear from Australia is that the Kookaburra at the moment is a really pronounced seam, quite
And
hard
nicking
to
everyone
bat
off.
against, and nicking everyone off. So it does make me think that there may well be something in that, because what I held was not the legacy of a ball that starts with a pronounced seam and is nicking everyone off, and what Davis seemed to suggest was that we are not using the same ball. In answer to the other part of your question, like we've done this. I feel like we've talked the Kookaburra's death on here, and thankfully it's the last round of the 4 on this, so we can get off it after this week. But I spoke to Kane Williamson after day 2 of that Middlesex game, and I said to Kane, who's I said to him, like, can you explain to me the difference between facing this ball here and this ball in New Zealand? And he just said, well, in New Zealand, there's some grass on the wicket. The wickets are hard. There's bounce, some carry, and there's a bit of pace in them. So you, whereas at Merchant Taylor's, we were watching Ryan Higgins bowl to a catching fine leg, a catching deep square leg in the ring, and a catching deep square.
Catching deep square leg in the ring.
Sorry, a catching square in the ring, a catching backward square in the ring, and a catching deep square leg. Essentially, they're for the one that they missed time because it's so slow off the pitch that people are through the shot. That's they're playing different sports, and Williamson, he's not the first New Zealander I've heard that from. Matt Milnes in an interview last month said that Ben Sears had said to them, I don't understand this. When I bowl in New Zealand, you bowl channel with the Kookaburra because you get pace, so you get carry and it flies through and whatever. And then you bowl channel with the Kookaburra in England. And because it's the only ball that's not going to hit you on the shin, you just get cut for 4 because it's so slow. So it's not, Will O'Rourke earlier in the season bowled 20 overs, none for 113 with the Kookaburra. Will O'Rourke in New Zealand with the Kookaburra had Harry Brook on his arse half the time. So, we are talking about broadly different sports. And I do wonder whether that comment from Steve Davis, I do wonder whether there is something in it that we're missing here.
Well, it sounds like we've got the wrong ball. Anyway, it's time for some Metro banking. So, going to have to change the ranks of your cricket draft team. And look, there's some pretty obvious picks here. Get Andy Umeed in, get Ed Barnard in, and just reap the rewards. That's all you need to do. Nick,
Kings.
Is there anyone else you should even be thinking? I wouldn't even pick 11. I'll just pick 2.
I mean, it's those, ever since Wayne Mulder graduated from Metrobank Callis to the Brian Lara Coward, then it's got to be these 2, isn't it? But Ed Barnard was I think he was the 6th highest run scorer and the top wicket taker last year. Pete Hanscom was the top run scorer last year. If you're looking for an overseas,
Prithvi Shaw played a little bit. That was fun.
He didn't score a bean last year though. It was the year before when he did score double hundreds the year before. The best thing about the One Day Cup is that at some point, someone will, out of absolutely nowhere, make an unbeaten double hundred.
So let's talk about how these potential players to keep an eye on. Let's go. First things first. Give me a quick summary of who are the teams to watch, because weirdly the table reverses when the Metrobank rolls around, because the teams you want to look at are the teams who've had the fewest players pinched by the 100.
Yes.
So Surrey, one of the strongest teams in the country, rubbish, been terrible in Metrobank.
But I would caveat that and say they shouldn't be.
Okay, but let the point stand that the bigger teams have performed poorly in the Metrobank, and the lesser teams, quote unquote, have been quite strong.
Broadly the case, although last 2 years, I think we've seen what we'll see more of, which is the bigger counties getting bigger, the squads getting deeper. Somerset were losing finalists last year. Hampshire were losing finalists the year before. In 2022, I can't remember anything about 2022. What was 20? Yes, I can. Kent beat Lancashire. So Lancs were losing finalists in 22, and in 2021, Durham were losing finalists against Glamorgan. So certainly the last 3 years, we've had counties who've historically lost a lot of players to the 100, still, finding a way. Lancashire this year lose 13 to the 100. Surrey lose 15 to the 100. Somerset, I'd say, a dark horse. Somerset only lose 7 to the 100 this year, despite their dominance as a T20 force. And they were finalists last year, I think, having lost a few more to the 100 then. But in answer to your question, Worcestershire are basically at full strength. Adam Hoge is the only player they're missing. Glamorgan only lose their spinners, Mason Crane, Ben Kellaway. They're obviously the reigning champions, and I think probably arguably the most successful team. Definitely the most successful team. They've won it twice since its position changed to August. Kent won in 2022. They're only missing Billings, Crawley, Muyeye. I think what's interesting about them is that is broadly, if you think about it, that is broadly their Champo team.
Yeah.
Billings only plays white ball. Crawley don't really see very often. Muyeye is not actually playing this round for them anyway. Leicestershire winners in 23. They're missing, and semi-finalists last year, they're missing Rehan Ahmed, Josh Hull, Louis Kimber. Derbyshire are missing Nye Donald, Pat Brown, Wayne Madsen. They're the ones who are missing 2 or 3. I think Essex missing 4. Let's say keep an eye out for Somerset because they're only missing 7, but also these the bigger counties, the 100 counties certainly have bigger squads. Surrey are missing 15, sure, but they've also got Ben Folkes, Rory Burns, Dom Sibley.
I'd be interested if they play this. Like Burns didn't play last year, Folkes didn't play.
But this is kind of what irritates me with Surrey's take on this all. Surrey, if they played their strongest available team, by which I mean the strongest 11 of players who are not at the 100, they would absolutely be among these strongest 11s. What they've struggled with the last couple of years, as I think I'm right in saying, is sort of experienced seamers. And that is where, as we've seen the last few years of this competition, that's kind of where it's won. I'd look out for Warwickshire. I think Warwickshire have a very experienced red ball seam attack, which they've added Ethan Bamber to this year. Ollie Hannon Dolby always takes a load of wickets in this. You can see them going quite well. If you think back to last year, Kai Smith, was it last year or 2 years ago?
Kai Smith was last year when he played that phenomenal innings.
Yeah, like they've got guys sort of breaking out like Kai Smith, for whom that was a breakout comp. Alex Davis, I don't think, has a 100 deal this year, which gives them a really, you have these players, who you don't realise aren't involved in the 100. Sussex won't have Ollie Robinson this year because he's injured, but he wasn't selected for the 100 this year if he'd been fit. Durham's Ollie Robinson, who scored a double 123, he doesn't have a 100 deal this year, so he goes back in. It's an interesting competition because there are counties who I think need to have a good tournament, and it's a competition that has become this like Carabao Cup style thing where if you're having a poor season,
give it a crack.
It can kind of save you. You can kind of like fudge it, and suddenly you're in a semi-final. And because of the way that broadly county fans have got on board with the competition and some of the crowds we've seen for the One Day Cup, you end up with this thing where you can kind of fake it, and suddenly you're in a semi-final and there are 8,000 people there, or 6,000 people at New Road, and everyone goes, "Do you know what? We're actually going quite well." And Worcestershire, dead, last in the Championship, probably going to get relegated. Didn't quite make the quarters of the Blast. They're missing one player for the One Day Cup. There's no reason why they can't go far. Same with Gloucestershire, who could do with some positivity around after amid the exodus and pretty mediocre attempt at defending they lost the first 5 games of their Blast campaign. Middlesex, who are kind of mid-table in the Championship, pretty poor Blast. They'll struggle. I think they've lost basically all of their top 6.
Yeah,
but yeah, that it's become a great opportunity.
And there's going to be some. This is part of the exciting part of the competition and especially where, in a weird way, maybe we're just kind of a bit too close to it. But because England under-19s have been playing against India under-19s, and Surya Vanchi's been involved, and Tom Roo's been captaining it, and Rocky Flintoff's been playing, and there's Hamza Sheikh's been having a game as well. Like, there's a little bit of momentum around some of these bigger names and these exciting names for the future who are going to be playing. So Hamza Sheikh, I imagine, will play every single game for Warwickshire. That England absolutely love him. He was captaining one of the kind of young England test matches. He's yet to really convert that into runs for the Warwickshire senior team. So this was a good opportunity for him to do that. I've just whacked it into Google. Farhan Ahmed doesn't have a 100 deal.
Don't think so.
So he's going to be playing throughout the competition. You've got the likes of Tom Rue, who'll probably get a good run for Somerset. There's going to be exciting names getting a proper opportunity to string together some matches.
Yeah, and there'll be some guys who probably aren't contracted yet as well. It wouldn't surprise me if guys like Ralphie Albert, who is on Surrey's books, did very well with the 19s. Alex French, who I'm told is this giant seamer at Surrey. Guys who Ben Mays has just signed his first professional deal at Hampshire. I'd be surprised if he doesn't play. He's a really interesting one. He was, I think, the batter that England took on this Lions camp with all their bowlers to Abu Dhabi at the end of the spring. Isaac Mohammed, who we have seen a bit of already for Worcester in the Blast. Ben Dawkins, who just signed his first professional contract at Kent. He got 100 for the 19s against India 19s. But then also, there's this list of guys who you'd think have 100 deals. You don't. Adam Lythe, who I think still holds the record for, I think I'm right in saying, unless it's been usurped recently. I think Lythe still has the highest blast score. Jake Ball, Alex Davis mentioned, Matt Fisher, James Fuller now has a 100 deal, Luke Holman, Michael Jones, Tom Lammonby, Jake Lintott.
Do you expect Luke Holman to have a 100 deal?
He was the 5th leading wicket taker in last year's Blast. But guys who've had very good, George Scrimshaw ended up with Rishi Patel.
Rishi Patel's
Matt Parkinson. There are a lot of guys essentially who you might think have 100 deals who don't, and it's always I think people because the narrative around the One Day Cup, it's easy to forget that it's not. When people call it a second team comp, that I've never liked that on multiple levels, but also the 100 is 100 cricketers roughly. The professional circuit is roughly 400 cricketers. There are 300 pros, involved. It's a really good competition. Archie Lenham is another one I've written down here. It's a really, really interesting case because he's been a kid, I suppose. He's still only 20. Yeah. He's been around for years. He's in the last months of his existing Sussex deal. I don't know if he'll get a new one. I don't think he's played a game for them this season in any format. And someone like him is just an interesting position in his career, and it's a funny comp in that way because it properly does. It properly does bring lots of different ball parts together. You've got Johann and Dalby at one end, and then you've got Archie Lenham who's fighting for his future, and then you've got these kids who we've not seen at all yet. One of whom will make a big 100 and will be like, "Wow, this is the next one." And it's you're smirking.
Well, I agree with you that it's a fun, interesting competition because you do have these varying types of player operating, and it's fun because you get to see these new, very talented players get a crack. I think the commitment to the bit that it's not a second team competition when 120 players are missing is it's the 1.5s. It is the 1.5s.
But anyone who's seen second team cricket knows that this isn't second team cricket, and Worcestershire will rock up with their first team. So is that the twos or is that not the twos? It's not second team cricket because it's not being played at Sussex aren't playing at Blackstone Cricket Club. The games will have a match referee. People won't be leaving a day early. It's not twos cricket. You won't have random clubbies playing because they're available on a Tuesday. It's not the twos. And you've only got let's say we look at we look at some of those names that we've listed, but you also look at some of those teams who are hardly missing anyone. Sure, it'll be Surrey's twos, and it'll be Lancashire's twos, but broadly, that's 30 of the players involved in 100 come from 2 counties.
Yeah, you know what?
16 counties they're unaccounted for. There are a lot of counties who have an 18-man, 19-man squad across the course, first team squad across the course of their season, who will not be looking beyond that. I was speaking to a couple of counties yesterday, chucked a couple of young names at them, said, do you think these guys are going to be involved, basically with the purpose of, naming them today on this? And they just said, no, probably not. We've got our squad. Sure, a couple of kids will come in and play as batters, and we, but they're generally not random, randomers. They tend to be Kai Smith, who they know is the next keeper off the ranks when Michael Burgess retires at the end of last season.
Yeah,
there will be the odd county. I think Derbyshire have signed a couple of guys on sort of month-long deals, haven't they? Or guys who've come in very much with the One Day Cup in mind. Gloucester have signed. I can't remember his name. Is it Dariush Ahmed, who is the YC who won that sort of YC's pilot scheme to get a contract for the One Day Cup. So there are examples of that. Last year, Worcestershire did literally sign a bunch of club cricketers to get them through the competition, with the number of players they're missing at the time. But I think the reality for a lot of counties is that it isn't a second team competition. Like you look at, Somerset are missing 7 players, but Somerset probably picked 19 players in the Blast.
Well, I'll consider myself told. I think that was quite a good. I thought your point about Surrey and Lancashire contributing to 30 of the 120 players.
That's a quarter of the competition, right? That's a quarter of the 100.
Yeah.
And of course, it's actually
1.25. No. It's over. You've made your point.
But it's fewer than that. It's more like a third, because if you've got a 15-man 100 squad and 3 of them are overseas players, really it's 8 12s. So it's 96 players. It's basically a third of the players coming from 2 counties. So you've got 60 players across the other 16 counties. Roughly, everyone's missing 4 or 5 players each. And quite frankly, going into every round of games, championship games, that's what tends to happen. If you chuck in that some of those players are white ball only contract players, some of those players are England Test contracted players, there genuinely are not that many players. It's why increasingly people say you could play a championship round underneath 100. I don't think you could, and I don't think you should. But a lot of counties would be broadly unaffected. We talked about Kent before. Kent would be missing Zach Crawley and Tawanda Miyeye from their next championship game if they played a championship game underneath 100, because Sam Billings doesn't play Red Bull cricket for them anyway. So, I don't think it's. I take issue with the second team thing, because second team cricket can be very bad, and this is not. This is nothing like that at all.
Well, the County Conversation podcast is sponsored by DafferBet, the world's leading online betting site. To find out more, visit dafferbet.com. That's all we have time for this week. Nick, thank you as ever for joining us. Nick Howson, lovely to have him on the show as well. I've been Cameron Punsonby. This has been the County Conversation. We'll see you and speak to you again next week.